of His Holiness, of the eminence archbishops, of the experts, of the priests, of all of you guys, is to have some kind of interaction together. So I will just give some insight from my personal experience. Satan has already mentioned I'm only, thanks God, 32 years old, but also thanks God, I have had the opportunity to serve our church for many years now. I have had the blessed opportunity to serve in other fields, in society, in politics, and to get experience in different dimensions of, let's say, mankind. So I don't want to give you any advice or plan or guide how to engage in the church. I think each one of you guys does already do that, and I'm pretty sure your presence here is a very good testimony of that. I want to say one remark before we start. Some things which I will say may sound to someone a little bit negative. Of course, when we talk about challenges and difficulties, it has some kind of problems. It bears some kind of problems in it. But it's not everything bad. But if we want to get better, if we want to get more professional, if we want to achieve more for our church, then we have to mention the problems in a frank and open way. And those who know me personally know that I don't shy away from mentioning the problems as they are, because this is what Christ taught us. He didn't shy away from any conflict with any part of the society at his times, not the Pharisees, not the, I don't know how they are called in English, Sadduceans? Yeah, Bach was saying saying yes, then it will be right. Leadership. This is the title of the whole program today. There are different ways of leadership. In the political realm, in the social realm, in the religious realm, in the ecclesiastical realm, leadership differs because you have another environment, you have other tools, other structures. So before we start, we should bear in mind what structure do we actually have in our church. So I will in my speech also elaborate a little bit about that. It's not a tool, leadership. Many people think that I can learn being a leader. I can learn how to speak. I can learn how to persuade people, how to bring people to make things that I want. I come from Germany. You know that leadership in Germany has a very negative connotation due to the time from 1933 to 1945, because there was one leader who wanted to not only decide what happens in politics, but he wanted to decide in every single part of the life of his people. So sometimes leadership, if it is understood in a false manner, it can lead to a negative. It can have negative repercussions. I don't want to say that we have dictators in our church, or they are, but obviously we know from our own experience, personally and in society, that leadership cannot only be a tool, but to me leadership is some kind of attitude. Being a leader is also part of the character of someone, and we have the picture of the imagination of the leader as someone who's standing in the front, who's saying everything, and the others just say yes and amen, and this is how we're going to do it. But actually, leadership has many different roles to offer. Me personally, I was for the last 2.5 years head of the Archdiocesan Council, but we were a team. And of course, we had, all together with the Archbishop, to exert some kind of leadership. But everyone in this council had its role in the overall leadership. For example, one of my best guys in the council, I don't want to diminish the efforts of anyone in the council, but because we are close friends, we studied together in the seminary of St. Jacob of SYGG in Warburg, alias Cello. He was seldomly present before the cameras or in pictures. But if I look back in the last 2.5 years, he was part of the, let's say, close leadership, because he was the, let's say, the consultant, the one whom I always mirrored. Alias, what do you say? Before telling anyone, Alias, what do you think? Can we go out with this? How will people understand that? There are dynamics that a leader cannot know for his own. So every leadership consists of many persons, and I think I can say that as a rule, maybe a law for my personal experience. A leadership who is built on only one person, from the perspective of this person, that meaning that the person doesn't listen to other people, doesn't listen to advice, is not a good leadership, because this leadership will, of course, everyone makes errors, but leadership is not a one-man show. It's teamwork. But obviously, not everyone can be or doesn't get into the role which I had the honor to get. I know it has been a process of many years, and this is why I want to elaborate on this time. The second point on the motivation. What should be the motivation? When I say what should be, you can hear it that there is also, let's say, not wrong motivation, but not optimal motivation. Baragreus, in his Ktobodiono, those of you who know Syriac and studied in the monasteries will know the book. Says at one point about the monk, maybe his motivation is not from inside. Maybe his motivation is to get shubhoda, to get pride from the people. Oh, look, the monk, he's serving, and he's standing on the column the whole day, or the poor guy. So Barnabas wanted to teach the monks how to be, how to serve God for their own. If they didn't have any teacher to teach them, it's a book that teaches the monk how to serve God. And he says maybe the motivation of this monk is not the intrinsic one, not the love of God, the love of Christ, but even that motivation, that, let's say, extrinsic motivation. There are other kinds of extrinsic motivation, like money, status, status, etc. There are many kinds of extrinsic motivations, but maybe he has only an extrinsic motivation, but he can have also good results. So we shouldn't say it's, let's say, it's not good because he has a negative motivation when we judge someone's work in the church. In the end, Christ has to be the source of joy and satisfaction for the one who serves in the church. Because if you ask me in the last 2.5 years, what was more, the people saying, hey, you're doing a good job, or the people criticizing, I would say it was like 80-20. 80% people criticizing, because when you are a leader, everyone else knows better how to do things. That's normal. So don't wonder, anything you do, others know better. That's normal. So you have to have a, let's say, a source that doesn't dry out, and this is Christ. And in order to have this relationship, you have to pray. Now it's a critical point a little bit. I know sometimes you get home very late, 1 or 2 o'clock. I had that very often when I had presentations in far places, had to come back, and then you're so tired and you just want to lay down. But recapitulating every end of the day and every beginning of the day, how has Christ helped me? And what do I wish for Him to help me the next day? It's very important. And if we get out of this, of our ecclesiastical structure, any coach of leadership in the business realm will tell you the most important thing is feedback. And praying for me in the business sense is feedback, feedback with God. And that's a very important thing, because if you do things that should work on the longer run, which need hard work for a long period of time without any result, you need a very, very strong motivation. And I know every one of you, maybe besides of the nuns and the priests and those living in the monasteries, I know every one of you has school, college, university, work, job, family. So we are doing that besides everything else. That needs motivation. I'm going to say something about the environment at a later point of time. Working in the church has some special characteristic. This is my third point. It's a spiritual service. We in our church, we have learned Sayyidina Matthew, Sayyidina Jean, Sayyidina Joseph, the priests, they will do the job. They are the church, and we are, and the nuns, sorry. The nuns and the deacons, they are doing the job, and we're sitting in the church 2.5 hours, listening, maybe understanding a little bit, maybe not. Then we go home, and that's it. And they are doing the job, and when we engage, we are there, but actually it's their job. We are doing their job. This is the position of many people who I know, that we are doing actually a job that the priest should do. But what I want to say at this point is that if you engage in the church, you are also doing a spiritual service, meaning that the moral standards for priests, for bishop, also apply to you. That should be actually the most shocking point in the presentation, but that's actually what Christ expects from us. Christ made an extension, made a differentiation between his disciples. Everyone had his role, but when it comes to moral standards, we all have the same. His Holiness the Patriarch, Their Eminence the bishops, the honorable priests, the nuns, the monks, everyone. And if you engage in the church, you are also the mirror, the face of the church. When I used to go to presentations to When I used to go to presentations, to receptions, etc., I was a representative of the church. And every Christian should actually bear in mind that he's representative of Christ. We bear his name. So if you are in the church, you have other moral standards, or you have to have other moral standards to yourself than others. The second sentence, which is on my paper, is I know that these moral standards are regularly not met. I know it from myself, not from anyone else. But it was in the first or second semester. I had a professor who has already passed away. He was a genius in international law, and he said, nota bene, international law applies even if it's not respected. You know, international law is political law. The United States, I'm going to become a little bit political now. The United States and Russia are the most powerful nations in the world. If they do something, the United Nations Security Council may or may not hold them accountable for that, but they don't care. It's political law. And actually in the church it's like this. I can break one of the 10 commandments and Christ will not send anyone to punish me. But the commandments and the rules and the standards apply, even if they are not met. What I want to say is, if I see my brother, Abuna, Sayyidna, everyone, if he doesn't meet these moral standards, that doesn't mean that these moral standards do not apply for me. And it doesn't mean that if I break these standards, that it's better because the others do too. According to what Christ says, the one who has a responsibility and who becomes, I know that the best word for this is keshlo in Syriac. What is it in English? Keshlo? Huh? Doubt? Yeah, who brings someone to doubt to doubt the word of Christ. He has a punishment for himself, but the other one who commits the error or the sin, he also breaks the rule. So moral standards apply everywhere, even if others do not. And I know that this bears a very high risk of demotivation, especially for those being new in the church service. They get in, they are very motivated, they do everything actually what we expect from a real leader in the church. They are perfectly motivated, and then they get into an atmosphere and say, hey, but this isn't what I expected from the structure in the church. And you know what? We are not all saints. It's as simple as it sounds. If you expect the church to be all saints, then we wouldn't need all the 7 sacraments. What is the sacrament of Theobutha in English? Confession. The sacrament of confession is a sacrament of continuous self-reflection, meaning that, or knowing that the man will fall in maybe the same sin various times. I remember my first real confession. Real confession. Maybe this is an issue for the Holy Synod to discuss how to make a revival for the real confession. not with 20 others saying the prayer after the priest and then communicating with the Eucharist. When I made my first confession, the priest, whom I appreciate very, very much, and this is why I went, and I had the real, it was, I was courageous to really say what sins committed. And he said, Scharbel, don't think about Gehenna, don't think about hell, and even when I know you will commit the sin maybe various times again because you're young and you're not that ripe. And then I was a little bit confused, like, yes, but I wanted to come and to get out in order to get the Eucharist and to feel, and I felt really like I was flying, I wasn't walking. It felt really, really good, but this is because everyone is a sinner, even in the church. So please, it's very important. Bear that in mind and tell out the others. If they expect only saints in the church, they are not, they will be motivated. Now let's come to the surrounding of our engagement. I've mentioned in the beginning you will get difficulties to get a mandate for doing something. I mean, you can go to the, for me it was like this, we had a new bishop and I went to talk to some guys and I said to Satan, I want to serve my church in this mandate. I want to become head of the Archdiocesan Council. Because I had the feeling I have to offer something to my church, I had the feeling that it was the right time, but it wasn't like everyone applauded and said, yes, we were waiting for you. No, please don't expect that, because this will not apply. This applies maybe 1% of 100 cases, but that doesn't apply. The reality is that people will say, who are you? Who is your father? What have you achieved already? It's very important. Okay, I was married at that time, but I didn't have a daughter. So that helped me a little bit. I was married. That's very important in our society. We are a very conservative society. You have to bear that in mind. And there are conservative forces. You go to the priest and you have a brilliant idea what activities you should do with the youth. And then the priest says, yes, but we have to ask Scharbel from the council. And Scharbel says, oh, your grandfather and my father, they were not friends. He will not say that. But I know he's the son of the grandson of that, and the family of them. I don't trust them. No. But they won't tell you. They will tell you we have many things to do, and there are so many important things like we have to build a church. We have to go and collect for the church. That's very important. Maybe you can help us with that. Many of our youngsters nowadays get the task, why don't you do this Facebook stuff? That's good. Yeah, make this. Say that this happened really. We were like 2 or 3 days. Does the camera film? Yes. We were like, Archdiocesan councils in Germany are elected. So you have to convince the people to give you their voice. They won't applaud when you come and say, hey, we're ready for you. And in 2 days there were some, I've called them conservative forces. One of them, who was one of my predecessors, he said, hey guys, come on, I like you very much, and I want you to be part in my council. And he said it like this, in my council. And I said, wow, that is exactly what I wanted. No. No. What I want to say is, you have to bear that in mind. Don't get demotivated by the first failure. I had the luck, and it went good, but I'm not the head of the Archdiocesan Council, as Sayyid Najam said. Since 1.5 months, it feels good, having much more time, and I'm already preparing, doing other things. And very important, I know that we are like from 7 or 8 countries. Abuna, how many countries are present here? 17? Wow. So 17 different societies. We in the West, we live in a world where saying, I'm gay, I'm atheist, is perceived as something normal, maybe something positive. And if you say, I believe in Christ, you have to persuade the others why it's right. So we are living in a society that is actually not friendly for religion generally, and Christianity especially. Christianity especially. The others from India have other problems. You have tensions between Jacobite and Orthodox in Kerala, for our church at least. You have tensions between Hindus, Muslims, and Christians. You have maybe this nationalistic tensions. In Sweden there are other problems. In the United States, in the Middle East, we have, it's a catastrophe, I cannot describe it. We have like, it's nothing. It's, better than me. So we have different societal environments, and you have to bear that in mind, because people will ask you. My friends didn't really know, those in the political realm, that I was engaged in the church. Because in Germany, you do that on Sunday. You don't speak. I grew up, and I was I'm still in the Christian Democratic Party, but even in that party, you don't speak about religious belief. It's not like they have, like in the conventions, they go to church, etc. That's part of the protocol. They don't really talk about Christianity. When you say, oh, I'm engaged in church, they say, oh, that's good, because then we can gain the support of your church for the next elections. But they don't say, hey, well, it's good. We know that you have, certain virtues. You have faith. You are reliable. We know what values you have. No, it's not always like this. It's not something normal. So you have to bear that in mind. What will you tell your friend in the school when you say, hey, I'm a deacon, I'm a subdeacon? You have to explain that. And we have another problem, of course. Who are you? What is your church? Do you believe? They asked them, do you believe in the Pope? Do we believe in do we believe in His holiness? Of course not. We obey Him. He's our Father, but we believe in Christ. But you have to know the answer. Because otherwise, they will, and that happens, they will look upon you as someone who does something without reflecting it. And that can diminish even your reputation and demotivate you. So the surrounding you're living in is very important for your own motivation and, in the end, for the success of your leadership. Now I come to the core element of my presentation. It's the ecclesiastical structure, its dynamics and pitfalls. We are an apostolic church. We say that every day when we confess our faith. That means we have a hierarchy. So faith on the one side and respect for the hierarchy on the other side is a conditio sine qua non. If you don't respect the hierarchy, you cannot work in the church structure. I know that sounds a little bit hard, but in this regard, we have to be honest. I know it's sometimes hard. You know, the priest can say no. He's the priest. He can say in his sermon whatever he wants. At least, I know, he's bound. There are Sayyidina looking critically. Now, I mean, he cannot say what he wants, but he influences the thinking of the people. So if he says no, if he's not convinced, you have to try it another way. It's a hard way, but you have to do it, and there is no other way. You cannot say, I know people who say, oh, the priest, his sermon, I'm praying at home, but believe me, they don't. Believe me, they don't. I have to admit, Sayyidina, on the one or the other Sunday, I couldn't go to church. And it was hard to pray. Because what do you do without a priest? You need the Eucharist. We are not only apostolic, we have a tradition, a liturgy. You know, I know the Scharbel. I don't have my fankita with me when I go on holidays. So there are some difficulties. But the people who say, "Oh, do it outside the church," no, that's not the right way. Because what we need is unity. And the picture here, I like it because it's actually one building. We are building one building, one church. You cannot do two churches. I know some guys from our church who go out and say, we will meet on Wednesday evening to pray, to read the Bible. That's very good. But I also know many of them who start to listen to other teachings. We have an apostolic faith and a clear ecclesiastical teaching. So you have to know it and you have to believe it. That's the condition. So in this regard, it's very important for every one of us to know that there are these pitfalls. And one other thing, because it happened these days, I said it in the beginning, we are very conservative, even when it comes to Christ. Especially, I don't want to criticize anyone, but I'm also from the Torah, I'm Haschoyo, but Azach is also part of the Torah. Because we have a very strict liturgy, many people think there is no Bible, there is no Evangelium, apart from that which is read in the church. Only the priest is allowed to read in the Bible. You are not allowed to read in the Bible. Who are you to read in the Bible? I've heard that. I've heard people saying that. So you have to bear in mind that these conservative forces are there, and you will be faced with them. Another thing, when you are in a certain leadership position in the church, you will hear many things. You will be faced with problems, sometimes private problems. People approaching you with, you cannot imagine what people call me about, divorce things, everything. When you are in the church, you will be faced with that. You will have information which is very sensitive, and I want you to know that leadership is most and foremost, do you say that? Most and foremost about responsibility. Because when you are in a certain position and you say something, you are not just, I always used to say that people, I thought, I had the notion people wouldn't understand that I'm not just Scharbel Gharib. I'm not just Scharbel Gharib. When I am in the church, I'm not sitting in the front because Gharib is a cool guy, because they love him. No, because I have a position. Maybe tomorrow I don't have. But at this point of time, I have information, and I have to take care of this responsibility. That's a burden. Tell you the truth, it's a burden. The thing which most, and that's very important for you too, you cannot achieve everything. Something which touched me very much in the last 2 years were when people used to call me personally or my parents from Syria, help us. What should you do? Help us, we need to get out. My father is ill, he needs medicine. And one of the moments where I really cried was when my mother said, do you remember 2 months ago, I told you there's a person who is very ill and he may need to come to Germany or to Europe to get some medication. He passed away. Leadership is also about sometimes not achieving something. You cannot do everything. You have to know that there are limits. You cannot save the world, but you have to try to. It's very important. You have to try to. I know it's very hard, but you have to try to. But don't get demotivated if it doesn't work the first time. It's the second time or the third time. But there were also things which fulfilled me personally with, yes, even honors, with a deep spiritual satisfaction. And this is very important for every one of us. I know if people say, hey, Scharbel is a good guy and he has achieved so many things for our church, that sounds very good. But you know what? Every one of you knows that. But if you hear it once, twice, it becomes something normal. It's like, sorry to say, like a drug. You want more. There are studies about politicians that say, actually politicians are addicted. They are addicted to pride, to people saying, hey, they are good. But the real satisfaction, you have to look for it. And you have to have the feeling for it. What gave me most satisfaction in the last maybe 15 years was one sentence written by a young girl of our church. She volunteered in Kirchentag. Those of you from Germany know very well what I'm talking about. She volunteered there. His Holiness was there. It was a great event, something very new. The concept, the realization, we're all young people. We had like 300 volunteers all over our monastery. We have been working for 1.5 years. And she wrote one sentence. And I read it in Facebook, and it was like, hey, I don't need anything else. She wrote, through this event, I found the love to my church again. And this must be the goal, the motivation, and the way of every one of us. If you are a true leader, you don't look for your own gain, you look for the gain of others. You may lose. You may lose money, you may lose time, you even may lose, let's be honest, friends. Yes. Friends who say, hey, come on, you were so cool, we were going out at night, we were having fun. What are you doing there, waking up at 7 o'clock to go to the church? You have changed. You became so... Was that boring? Boring. Thank you. Boring. That was the word. Therefore, one of my last points, be prepared for difficult moral decisions. There may be some point of time where you have to decide A or B. There is no right or wrong. There's maybe worse and a little bit less worse. There is no good. But you have to live with these decisions. And very important, be ready to take decisions. Taking decisions is one, in the business realm, Milad knows better than me, I think, is one of the core competencies of a leader, taking decisions. One of my former bosses, he was former minister for energy and transportation in our state of Baden-Württemberg, and the minister of energy and transportation is the one with the highest budget, because they have to make the ways, etc., etc. And he said, actually, as a politician, I'm a machine taking decisions. I'm a machine taking decisions. People, as a leader, you are asked to take decisions. And you sometimes you have to say, Milad, no, really. You're my brother, I love you, but you cannot do that. Abuna, sorry, no. And maybe he will 2 or 3 days don't talk to you. But if you take the decision, if you tell him why, Milad, I've thought about it very much. There are point 1, 2, 3 against what you want to do. No, please. He may 1 or 2 days say, oh, come on, he's my brother. How could he say that to me? He must see the difference. I'm not like the others. But that's where, sorry to say that, abuse begins. When I make a difference between my brother and any one of you whom I don't know the names nor the families, then I'm not a leader anymore. Then I'm using my position for personal profit. And profit can be in many, many ways. Oh, I mentioned Milad, my brother. That's very good for the next point. Talk to your family. I know every one of you has a father and a mother who also go to church. Maybe you all grew up in church, but you have sisters, brothers, they have also expectations. For me, for example, it was very important. My wife is not here, so I can say anything and no one will say, no, that's not right. That's good. Just kidding.
That is on camera.
You're on camera. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anyway, no. We did really good talk about it, I have to admit, before, because it was some kind of, an evolving process. Is it an evolving process? But there are things where you have to talk to your family and say, it may be that from 4 weekends, and that was reality with me, from 4 weekends, it's 3.5 that I'm not here. And I cannot bring Helena to bed because I have presentations, or I have to go to a meeting 300 kilometers away, and I will come back only at 12 o'clock. Another thing, talk to your boss if you have a boss. That's very important. And my boss asked me once, Mr. Gharib, I'm political consultant with the Chamber of Crafts in Baden-Württemberg. He has some notion of irony. He said, who in the Ministry of Energy talks Arabic? And I knew what he meant, because he had listened to me that I was talking with, I don't know whom, by phone, in the office, with someone from the church. So talk to him and say it's like this, and make it clear. That's very important. Make a clear line. Your job is your job, and you will not serve anyone if you neglect your family, your children, your daughter, your parents, and do other things. It's reiterated very often the family is the nucleus of the church, and but I have lived it, believe me. And that's also one point of motivation. Why do we do that actually? Why do I engage in the church? Because I want my little daughter to grow up in a strong church, in a church which can help her face the problems of life which one can have in the Western civilization or wherever she may decide to live later. Because I want my church to live for the future and to nourish my daughter as it nourished me. In the beginning I said I don't want to give advices, but there's one point in the preparation which I cannot skip. It may sound a little bit like, oh, come on, yes, we know, but be educated, learn very much. You have to have a very, very high degree of knowledge. That's very important. When you go out, you may be asked many things about our church, and it's very good that in this program there are also topics about church history, about the Bible. This is one thing my father's priest, always criticizes. If you compare, like, you cannot generalize it, but generally spoken, the Muslims know the Quran from A to Z. Many of them, not everyone, I know it's different. But who of you knows how many books does the Bible have? Who can name the books one after the others? Who can tell me in each book what is the main message? Who has ever read the book of Tobit? Okay, I've read it once in school because we dealt with it. Now, really, honestly, we cannot be good Christians by just saying, oh, I know the Ten Commandments. By the way, who can name the Ten Commandments without committing an error? So, when I say be educated religiously, historically, socially, politically, in every realm. When I came into office, Sayyidina Dawud Sharaf is here with us. The problem, the crisis in the Middle East was only in Syria. And when what happened to Mosul and to Nineveh, the media were calling us, what do you say about what happened? I know priests that were called, what is your stance? What are you doing for your brethren there? And they used to call us, what shall we say? It was a situation which we did, you cannot plan, you can't foresee it. But I mean, you have to be prepared to give answers to questions which you cannot foresee. So be prepared for that. I wanted to speak like 20 minutes. It has become a little bit more. Okay, but no one is sleeping, so that's fine. In the end, I want to come back to the motivation. And I want to say a quotation which is not in the narrower sense of the word a quotation, but a priest whom I appreciate very much. His Holiness knows him because he's a priest in his when he was archbishop in his archdiocese, and he told a friend, who is a very close friend of mine, when it came to engaging in the church. It was at the time, I admit, when I was still considering becoming monk. I can still become priest, that's another thing, that's good in our church.
But when we were still, like 2 or 3 of us, considering becoming monks, and this father said to him, X, that's his name, if you don't take this responsibility, there will be others to take her. And maybe they are not as capable as you are. Maybe they are not as capable as you are. I don't want to judge anyone. But this does not only apply to priests. This does apply to every engagement. If you don't do anything,